Hello and welcome to another edition of Golriz podcast. I'm Sina, Saemian. I'm your host for today. Today I'm joined by our regular panelists, Pasha, Hajian, Pezhman, and Babak, Golriz. Guys, how you doing? It's great to speak to you.
Appreciate us having this conversation again. It's good to see Babak back after a while, and Pezhman. We're all directors of Golriz, and it's good. Looking forward to speaking to you guys again.
Definitely. So after a long anticipation, finally the final round of World Cup qualifications started. We are, as you know, grouped with South Korea, Uzbekistan, Syria, China, and Qatar. And our first game took place on Thursday against Qatar at home. So, before we go into detail in terms of the game, what were your expectations about this game? Especially because it's always important to start with a win. Because historically, since the AFC changed the format to how it is right now, any team that lost its first game don't usually end up qualifying for the World Cup. So it was really important for us to start with a win. But what were your expectations going into the game, Babak? I'll start with you.
To be honest, I was feeling positive. I felt the training, what I'd read about training camp earlier in Italy seemed to be good vibes from the team and Queiroz. I was expecting a tight game. When I looked at doing some research before the game, I noticed quite a few new players for Qatar compared to a couple of years ago when we played them during the Asian Cup, I think. So I was a bit surprised by that, but I still expected a tight game and probably out edging it. When the game started, it turned out to be a little bit different for me. But I'm very, very happy with the result because I think it was at least 2 bonus points for us.
Pezhman, as you know, we are after the game against Qatar, we've got 2 very difficult away games. So, of course, as I said, a win was important. But how important do you think that result is going further into the qualifications?
I think it's really important because most of us had calculated with an Iranian win against Qatar at home and at least a draw in Doha. Having not won in Qatar, in Azad Stadium, would have put some extra pressure on Iran and maybe even put them in some shock and could affect the game against China. So, as Babak said, it's 3 really important points, 2 extra points. So this game could very well be the one that puts Iran ahead when all games have been played.
Absolutely, and I think heading into the game, there was a lot of doubts over who would start in specific positions. I think we could probably guess 8 out of 11 starting 11, but there were a few doubts over who would start in specific positions. But Pasha, were there any surprises for you in the starting lineup?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, I pretty much expected Dabi to the lineup or even Mortaza to play as center back. But for me, the surprise was Taremi. I didn't expect him to play out wide, even though probably Babak sometimes thought that, he was playing in the middle. But I felt like Ashkan was playing in the middle. I thought that was probably one of his poorest games, Taremi. I think it's just a position that he's being forced to play there. I believe he was up against Pedro, and they're both full backs of Qatar did well. I was just really surprised to see Taremi there. I thought presumably it would have been probably Amiri, but as we know, he's been very, very poor, and or even Torabi. So I think that was just a mismatch that Queiroz did No disrespect to Guam or anything, but I mean, I remember Tarmi was playing brilliantly in that position, but it was against a side like Guam. But interesting enough, one thing I do want to pinpoint is that I think this was like Izzatullah's first start again, alongside Andranik Teimurian. Usually we see him with Omid Ebrahimi, and but nonetheless, we could have predicted the lineup or even the goalkeeper. We could have said it could have been Haigli. But as we know, his current situation, the club wasn't going well. He wasn't getting any minutes. But nonetheless, this was a vital win. We got 2 back-to-back away matches that are very, very difficult. And then we have South Korea at home, so this one was vital. But clutching an injury winner was probably the greatest sweetness that could happen to any Iranian. And but nonetheless, I didn't really appreciate the antics that happened after the match. I mean, with Nekunam and all that. But a win is a win, end of the day. But still, we have a lot of improvement to do. But I think that Queiroz and the team definitely underestimated, and we definitely disrespected them in the way that we felt like we could just easily get a win, and we got proven wrong, especially in front of 100,000 fans.
You mentioned Taremi there, and that was going to be my next question. Not a lot of us expected Taremi to start. It's not something he hasn't done before. Carlos Queiroz has usually started with Taremi down the left or even on the right, even though he's a centre forward. But I mean, me personally, I expected him to start a winger on the left, so it was a bit surprising to see Taremi. But I know maybe he's got it wrong. But what do you think the thinking behind playing Taremi on the left was? Was it to support Osman, or was there any other thinking behind it, Babak?
I think you hit the nail on the head, basically. It's someone with a goal-scoring capability, and he's proven it for Iran in the past. Someone who can pop in and score a goal, probably not a conventional winger. He's not a winger at all. I just feel that overall, during his time with Team Melli, he still hasn't really looked comfortable, despite the goals he may have scored or the impact he has had in terms of the final output. The opponents have not been the best, and I feel that he's still trying to find himself, and his position isn't clear, because Ashkan would drift towards the left, go towards the right, and then get space into the middle. But Taremi was kind of static. He wasn't moving or making runs. He looked a little bit out of his depth, and I haven't been impressed with him for Iran yet, to be honest. And I wouldn't like to see him start the next game, or unless it's going to be in his own position, where he could be closer to Osman and maybe play 2 men up front. But then probably Gucci would be my preferred choice.
Yeah, I think he was one of a few poor performers in that game. But another surprise in the lineup was Alireza Beyranvand in goal. I mean, as Pasha said, it was a little bit expected, but of course, when you see the usual number one sitting on the bench, it's always a surprise. But Pezhman, what did you think of the decision to play Beyranvand in such an important game at home? Do you think there's an indication that he might be Iran's number one going further into the qualification, or is it just a matter of him not having a club at the moment and being a free agent and not having played any minutes since the end of last season?
I think it's your second opinion. I do believe that Queiroz have faith and trust in Hariri, but no matter how good you are, you need to have your minutes in your club. And he haven't been playing any games, and he's now, I think, the only Iranian player in the squad without a club. It's not enough to be a good player. You develop during 90 minutes of the games. No matter how hard you train, the best development is to actually play those important games. So this is Carlos Queiroz, for me, being the most professional coach he can be. Even if you have your favorites, it's not enough to just be a decent player or somebody that you like. You need to also do your very best and show that you can play every week and every weekend and actually produce something or be vital to your team. Beyranvand has been vital to his teams, and both teams now he's in Persepolis, and that's why he's got a first option. If Hariri will get a new club, a decent club in Europe, and will start playing regularly, I do believe that he will once again start for the national team.
I want to agree with you, but at the same time, the fact that he preferred Ramin Rezayan at right back over Buriak Afuri, Ramin Rezayan, who has had his problems after his move to Turkey, and then he decided to terminate his contract. So he's not played any regular football, and right now he's a free agent. But he preferred him over Buriak Afuri, who's been playing every single game for Esteghlal during the season. So do you think he's contradicting himself there by making that choice?
But for Ramin, it's only been like 4 games in the Iranian league that he haven't played. Hariri haven't been played almost all last season. He played for Maritimo in a couple of useless games, and in one of those games he let in 6 goals. So I believe that Ramin Rezayan's and Reza Hariri's situations are quite different. And also you have some trust in Rezayan, and in my opinion, I think Buriak Afuri isn't that good in his attacking play, and that's why he chose Rezayan, because what I believe is that Queiroz wanted to attack more from his side, but he probably miscalculated how Qatar would play, because Rezayan got under some heavy pressure, and I think that Afuri would have cope under that pressure much better. So it would be interesting to see how he will formate against China, playing Buriak Afuri or Rezayan, or maybe even putting Pezhman Montazeri on that side and putting in Pur Ganji in the middle. It would be interesting to see how he will deal with that.
No, I completely agree with you. I think in the previous round we saw Jahan Bakhsh and Rezayan having a good partnership down the right. And I thought that's also partly, for me, that was partly the reason why he played Taremi on the left, to provide support for Osman for the crosses that were coming in from the right. But I think you were right. I think he miscalculated how dangerous Qatar are from the left. But anyway, moving on from the lineup, listen, I mean, the final result was a 2-0 win. If you would have told me before the game that we would win 2-0, most of us would have 100% took it and would have probably said it would have been a good performance for us to win 2-0. But that wasn't really the case, was it? Babak, do you think the result is a little deceiving in terms of the performance? Do you think we have a lot to improve on, certainly going into the game against China?
Well, I definitely think so. There's a lot to improve on, from some of the selection choices like Ramin Rezayan, who I think was the root cause of a lot of Qatar's good opportunities. He was being sliced open, either overtaken or the through ball between him and the centre back towards him. So I think I would really think twice about playing Ramin Rezayan in the away games or in games where we're going to be under pressure, like against Korea and possibly China away now. Taremi as well, the experiment there didn't work out well. So overall, I think that both selection-wise and then performance-wise were maybe the players. I'm not sure about Carlos Queiroz underestimating Qatar, but I think Iranians by nature felt confident. That's a home game against Qatar. We always beat them, let's say, or we don't lose to them at least. We'll pick 3 points. But the players, I think they underestimated how tough Qatar would be, because that performance from Qatar was one of the best away performances by a team that is on paper not as good as us. We need to give them credit. So not often do you see a team of that caliber coming to Iran in front of 100,000 people. It wasn't in half empty Azadi Stadium, and dominate the game, in my opinion, at least for the first 60 minutes or so. They had good possession. They had good passing interplay. They created maybe not too many clear-cut opportunities for the kind of let's say, dominance in inverted brackets that you may call it. But overall, they were impressive, and they showed a lot of signs that they will cause a lot of other teams trouble. At first 5-6 minutes, I was very shocked at how quickly Qatar started the game, and it took us a bit, or maybe I could say first 10-15 minutes, because we may have started just on the right foot, but then Qatar took the ball and took control of the game. And then going towards the second half, I expected Queiroz to have given a rollicking to the players, but Qatar came out even better than they started the first half. So it was very key that we didn't concede goals. They didn't create as much clear-cut opportunities as you would have thought, and we probably had the better chances throughout the game, at least in terms of Ali Reza Jahanbakhsh's early efforts in the first half, I think, where he could have passed Osmoon in, and then on the second half you had Ansari Fad, and then obviously our goals. So overall, I think there's a lot where we can improve on. Our passing, we went back to the old days where we couldn't get 3 passes in a row together, and then the tempo, while it started better towards the second half, again, we started to go slow and then lethargic, and then long balls trying to get openings for Jahanbakhsh or Osmoon, who was very, very isolated. I felt the space between defense, let's say the back 5 and the front, let's say 6, was quite heavy. So you had a lot of empty space, but Qatar's 2 defensive midfielders or central midfielders, they were high up and they would collect a lot of the balls, the second balls in the middle of the pitch. So I think the game against China, we better improve, otherwise we may not come out with even a point.
Pasha, as Babak just said, the first 15-20 minutes we started brightly, but watching the game, it felt like the players were slightly nervous, and I think as the game went on, they were getting frustrated and panicking. Do you think that was the case? Do you think that could partly be the reason for the poor performance before our first goal in the 3rd minute of added time?
I think with Qatar and their coach right now, Carrero, you could tell they're very prepared. But as we all know, with the problems we have within Team Medley, I don't think we were honestly prepared. Even with the camp they had in Italy, most of those players were pretty much on trial, even if it was under closed doors. So these guys don't get a lot of opportunities, playing together, And I believe that when we were watching the match, you could see that the players were trying to force everything they could possibly do. There was no tempo, there was no cohesion, Nobody was connected, really, Thankfully, only Jalal Hosseini and Montazeri were being solid. Dejaga was trying to do everything he could, but as we know, even Babak has mentioned before, he doesn't have the legs, he doesn't have the pace anymore to play on the wing, so the 10 was predominantly all he could do. But even the midfield, and with Taimouri and Izzatullahi, and, with our front 4, it was very poor. Everything was disconnected. Now, usually we know that with Iran, usually when they start off, in the World Cup qualifying campaigns, it's not like a rapid start. It's not anything live. It's not something that we're all amazed. It's usually we always expected to, have a poor start. And as we all know, when Queiroz 4 years ago, that's how it all started. And there was a time that he was about to get sacked, I believe, during the Oman match, or I think that was one of the friendly matches that everybody was getting worried. And he changed his tactic-wise, and then we went on to, getting to the World Cup. It's always these kind of situations happen with Iran, but I never expected us to be, so disjointed, in the team. But honestly, looking forward to how we're going to line up, because things need to be changed. And for going back to the Ghafouri situation, I feel like Ghafouri is way too attack-minded for, a manager like Carlos Queiroz, with, the Portuguese, philosophy that he has. I think Ramin Rezaeian covers the defensive work really well, too. But as we know, even Haj Safi and him were exposed, and if they had a clinical, interplay like Qatar did, we would have lost. If this was against the South Korea match, we would have lost. But nonetheless, there's a lot of improvements need to be done. But hopefully, I believe that Queiroz will fix these problems. But it's very, very, at the moment, it was not impressing at all. But I do believe that things will change, but it's just a matter of better sooner than later, because if it was any other team, we would have lost this match. And even if we got a point against Qatar, that still would have been a loss for us. They came to Azadi trying to get at least a point. But as we saw, even they brought Afif on, you could tell that they were trying to go for the win. And that's very worrisome for a country like Iran, because we forced it, we did win, but it was nothing to be proud of for a country like us. And hopefully that these going to be worked. But the team was very disjointed. I think we were just forcing everything. There was no football, really. It was just a matter of fact that we just got lucky. And, as football, that's the cruel reality of football. Sometimes luck happens. So, yeah.
Pezhman, going into the game, one of the partnerships that I was really looking forward to seeing was the partnership of Andranik Teimourian and Izzatullahi in midfield, because for me that might be the midfield partnership that we'll see if we do qualify for the 2018 World Cup. And so how did you think they did in this game? I mean, Izzatullahi, of course, is really young, and Andranik is the captain, experienced. On paper, it looks like it could be a great combination. But how well did you think that partnership worked in midfield?
It's kind of hard to say because it's too early to make any to give any real answers on how the partnership will be in the future. I think we need at least 4, 5, 6 games with Andu and Izzatullahi playing together. But if we're just going to take the game against Qatar, I would say it's an okay partnership. They both are kind of physical in their way of playing, in their style. Izzatullahi is a strong guy. He's kind of big. He's not afraid of going into harsh duels and showing that he wants to take the ball. But he's also not that fast. And in the game, he gave away a couple of free kicks that if some of the better teams will play against, will pinpoint Izzatullahi because of his lack of speed, he will get in trouble. And that's the difference with him and Andu. Andu is also maybe not that fast anymore, but with his experience, he knows when to do what. Therefore, but if we want to go back to your question, I do believe that they are probably the best options we have right now. But I'm still very interested to see how Shojayan can do with maybe even Izzatullahi. Why not? These two young players have the future ahead of them. So we'll have to see.
I would like to say I was a little bit disappointed in Izzatullahi. I thought he went a little bit missing during the game when you need your central midfield to stamp their authority, get the ball, start to spread it around. I felt he was a little bit maybe overwhelmed in the middle of the game. You know, you couldn't see him really like pushing in, trying to get the ball back, and then trying to dominate, dictate tempo, reduce it maybe to control the game for a little bit. I felt that he should have done more. I know he's young, but he's already played for the national team at least 7, 8 games already. So, and he's been playing for Rostov in Champions League games too. So I expected a little bit more from him in this game because he definitely has the quality. And when he was spraying the pass around, you could see the quality and the range in his passing. But I hope to see a bit more from him in the coming games.
Yeah, I think he's a really young player, and of course we know about about how talented he is. So I think just with time and the more games he gets of this caliber, because it's not easy playing at home with so much expectations in the heart of midfield. So I think we can definitely expect more in the near future. But the last point I wanted to make about the game against Qatar is that this time 4 years ago we didn't have much strength in depth. We were crying out for a centre forward, for some quality on the pitch. But now that's not the case anymore. We're seeing the younger generation coming through. We had so many strikers on the bench, and it was those substitutions and those changes that really got us through the line. And even though, yes, the goal was a mistake from their goalkeeper, but it was a combination of Ansari Fard and Najad, the two substitutes that made the first goal. How important do you think that is going further into the competition? Because there will be injuries, there will be players missing, but at least we know we've got good enough players on the bench who can step up and do a job. Do you think that can be crucial going further and further into the qualifications, Pasha?
Yeah, so far in my lifetime, I've never even seen Iran to have such a strong bench. You know, the amount of options we have, defensive-wise, midfield-wise, and attack-wise, as we saw today. So he changed it immediately to a 4-4-2, trying to put as much as pressure he could do with Karim and Gucci. It's going to be, we need depth. You know, in all these tournaments, we need depth in order to try to succeed. If injuries happen and whatnot, players fatigue, So it's just a matter of fact that how to get all these players on the same wavelength, I think, is the hardest thing with Carlos Queiroz. And thankfully, as we saw, Gucci Najat has been clutch for us in many, many games. South Korea, in the Asian Cup against Iraq, against Qatar. And it just shows how vital he was. And, but depth is one of the key important points for us.
Babak, what do you think?
I agree. I think your question was very, very important. 4 years ago, we really were struggling to put out 11 quality players, and we were worried about what's coming next and what's the next generation of Iranian footballers. But we've been, first of all, lucky that there's continuity in terms of Queiroz continuing with the same group of players or the core and watching their development, and then getting quality players like Sardar Azmoun, which is a huge surprise for us. Ali Reza Jahanbakhsh. These are players we would have taken one of them if instead of having two or three, like Said Ezzatullahi as well. And then there's youngsters like Reza Karimi coming through who may you never know play a part towards the World Cup. So we've got now a lineup where in terms of goal we have probably two good goalkeepers. We've got a third centre-back coming through in Mortaza Pour Ali Ganji. Two right-backs, of which, maybe they're not both defensively very sound. And then on the left-hand side, which I still feel is a big problem, you've got Mohammadi, who could knock on Haj Safi's door, allowing him to move forward. And then on the wings, again, you have probably two for each position. You've got Masoud Shojai, who's still in the squad. You've got a central midfield where Omid Ebrahimi could easily slot in for one of the two. And up front, you've got three strikers now who are probably all of a level which is good enough in Asia. So I think we have a decent squad, and it's going to be important because this qualification campaign is going to be very long and tight.
I completely agree. And on the back of that, Pezhman, we've had a long trip we're making a long trip to China to play them on Tuesday. The Chinese played against South Korea in Seoul on Thursday, and they narrowly lost 3-2 after being down 3-0, and they managed to bring it back to 3-2 in the final 20 minutes and give the South Koreans a bit of give them a nervous final 15 minutes. So on the back of that, talking of the squad and the strength and depth, do you think there'll be any changes to the lineup playing against China?
Yeah, I think so. And before I talk about that, we have to praise Qatar, although it's hard for Iranians to like the Arabian teams in the Persian Gulf. Qatar did it really well, and we have to praise them. And no matter what nationality their players actually have, they played really good against Iran out of the stadium. That was cheering for Iran in 90 minutes. So all respect to them. Talking about the changes, as we said before, I hope that we look over the Rezaeian situation. The Chinese, maybe in my opinion, they're not as strong as Qatar, but we're playing away, and China have a young, interesting squad. I read some about them, and they can, if they want to progress or they want to be in the World Cup, this is their time. But for me, I would say Rezaeian out, either Afuri in, or taking Pezhman and Montazeri to taking his place, and Pour Ali Ganji playing in the middle. Also, Taremi had a tough game. I believe that Torabi will be a good substitution for him, and I believe that Dejaga won't be fit for that game. So we'll probably have another place there free, and that's a tough one. Do we want to play Masoud? Do you want to play Torabi and Taremi? I doubt it. I hope that we want to see Amiri playing from start, because he haven't improved in my opinion, even moving to Persepolis. But we have to see. But I think we'll have to see at least two changes. And that's Taremi and Rezaeian.
Pasha, for me, this will be a very, very tough game because it's always difficult for us to go to East Asia and get a great result. But we're playing a Chinese side who have just lost to South Korea, and they know they will have to give this a game a go if they want to stay in the race for automatic qualifications to the World Cup. So that kind of makes me feel like Queiroz will be a lot more conservative approaching the game, especially because I don't feel like he will want to lose the game, and he would want to at least get a point away from home, which would be a valuable point. So are you expecting, in terms of tactics and in terms of the way we approach the game, do you think Queiroz will make massive and drastic changes?
I don't think there will be drastic changes. It's just that the setup that China has, predominantly you could say that it's very hard to break down in terms of if we don't counterattack pretty well. But at the same time, I think what I had right now is that I know Dejaga, like we said, might be probably out, and I think Shojai will slot in there. But interesting enough, I think that Milad Mohammadi will start. I think he will start left back, and then we'll see Haj Safi left wing. And right wing, obviously, Adriz Jahanbakhsh. I just feel like it won't be anything drastic changes. I don't think Queiroz is going to be too defensive in this match, but I do believe that if in order for us to, break down, like a country like China, and Bayram is probably one of our key players. And I say that not just because he's a goalkeeper, but because of how, like a goalkeeper with that long throws he does, that could easily help us with the counter-attacking plays that he tried to do numerous of times against Qatar. But we definitely didn't succeed in doing that. But I don't think he'll make anything drastic changes into the sense that we're going to be way too defensive-minded. Obviously, as we know, Queiroz is always going to be conservative in some sense. But I do believe that there's going to be some defensive changes, and I think we might actually see Milad Mohammadi. I don't think we'll see Taremi or Dejaga, but I definitely think we might see Haj Safi either on left wing, and I think Masu will slot in at 10.
Babak, from what I've heard and the formations and the lineups that I've seen, China tends to play with a back three or a back five, however you want to look at it. And that's not really a common tactic to face in Asia, and I can't remember a team that we played and we had to face a back three. So what do you think is the right approach to this type of formation and tactic?
If they're playing with a back three, to be honest, I haven't watched any of the game against South Korea. But if they are playing with a back three, then it would need Jahanbakhsh and whoever plays on the left to support Azmoun far more than they have before. Otherwise, he would be very isolated. And I think that someone like Kafuri or Rezayan on the other side could overlap and cause their defense trouble. It's not common in Asia right now, as we know. Most teams seem to play with a back four, but I don't see us changing our style or formation or system, whatever you want to call it, to combat that. I would be highly surprised if Queiroz lines up in any other way than we have seen in recent times. But it will be interesting to see how two different systems go up against each other. So I'm very curious to see how it plays out, and I hope that Sardar Azmoun has more support than he had against Qatar.
So just before we wrap up the podcast, I would like to know your predictions for this game against China. For me, I think getting a point away from home is great. That means we've had 4 points out of the first two games. It's a good start, but I would like to know what you guys think, Pezhman.
Well, it's really hard. Usually Iran have good stats against China, and we're supposed to be the better team. But as you mentioned before, China don't want to lose another game, especially at home. This will be probably their hardest home game, maybe the game against South Korea. But I have to admit, I would be happy with a draw if Iran managed to play the way that we've seen Iran play, because then I know that the game against Qatar was something that was due to lack of, concentration or something. So a draw for me is good if Iran manages to actually play good.
Pasha, I'm going to come to you until we get Babak again. What will your prediction be for this game?
I think we'll nick it 1-0. I think it'll be a very difficult match. I still don't see us, improving drastically in the sense that, middle of the night, our footballing stats is going to be amazing. But I think we'll barely win it 1-0. But I don't see us losing to them. But I do see us maybe drawing.
So just before I wrap up this podcast, we've had a question on Twitter from one of our listeners asking, would Carlos Queiroz be our manager in 2018, and is he happy in the position? And this question was from Tom Samari. Pezhman, would you like to answer?
Well, the amount of times Queiroz has said that he will leave the national team is, I've lost count now. So it's been like a boring drama because it doesn't get attention anymore. I do believe that his aim is to stay in Iran and take the team to another World Cup. If him being happy, I don't know, because every time he talks about the federation, he doesn't seem to be happy about how they act and their performance against him. But I do believe that he will stay. He won't get fired, because then the federation will have to pay him, and we all know that the federation lacks of some stability in the economic department. So I think he will stay as long as he wants, as long as he gets the results.
I think some of his concerns were also about the kits and the training camps, which I think obviously with the potential deal with Adidas would remove some of his concerns. And with the training camps we've been holding in Italy, I think he would be content at the moment. But Pasha, what do you think? Do you think he'll remain as our manager if we do qualify for the 2018 World Cup?
We know with Queiroz and the federation, we have everything so sporadic that you never know. Maybe after the China match, he decides he wants to leave. But as you guys have pinpointed, everything has been going well. We might getting that great deal with Adidas, but maybe the pitch hopefully will get fixed too for training camp. And on Azadi, at the moment we could all say that he's happy. We all know that he knows how much Iranians love him, but it's just Queiroz and the federation both have very sporadic behaviors, and any sense he could decide to leave or threaten to leave. So I guess this is a good question to leave towards maybe end of the qualifying campaign. But at the moment, I think that Queiroz will remain. But if we do qualify, I wouldn't be surprised if he decides that, okay, I got Iran to the World Cup, and then I'll decide to leave and let somebody else take my place. But at the moment, I think Queiroz is going to be our manager.
Well, talking about the World Cup, that sounds like such a long time away with the qualifications having just started. But thank you, Pezhman, Pasha and Babak, for your contributions. That is the end of our podcast. As some of you may know, we play China on Tuesday. The time of the match will be 1:30 p.m. Central European Time for any of you that's interested to watch the game. We'll be back after the game against China to review the game. Hopefully it'll be a win and 6 points from the first 2 games. But until then, thank you for listening. And if you have any comments, suggestions, then please tweet us at Golbezan, and that's GOLBEZAN. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.